You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. If you were to look at a room full of women, do you think that you could tell what they do for a living? The answer to that question is probably no. My point is, if there was a prostitute in the room, you probably wouldn't know that's what they do for a living because they look like everybody else. For example, if you look at this picture, and I told you there was a prostitute in the picture, you probably couldn't tell me which one it is. And that's just because they're normal people. They just do a different job than we do. Prostitution is something in our society that is usually looked down upon and seen as bad. Many people don't think that prostitution should be legalized, but I think that prostitution should be legal. When I was researching about this topic, I found a lot of benefits that go along with the legalization of prostitution. Prostitution is something that we mainly just see in movies, and if we see it in real life, we don't think much about it. However, it's a very interesting topic, and it brings about quite the debate. Today, I ask that you stay open-minded as I talk about the current status of prostitution, the benefit of prostitution, and how we view it in society. First, I'm going to start by talking about the current status of prostitution. So here in the United States, prostitution is actually illegal, except for in Nevada, there are certain counties where they have legalized it. According to an article written in 2013 titled Regulated Prostitution as a Component in the Fight Against Human Trafficking by Jarrett Rayborn, he says that prostitution is a state law and each state has the right to decide what they want to do with prostitution. So this being said, each state can regulate what they want to do with it and they can make it legal or illegal. The federal law actually has nothing to do with prostitution. The federal law just leaves it up to the states. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, in the state of Nevada, there's 8 counties where prostitution is actually legal and they religiously practice it. And since it's up to each state, it's totally normal and perfectly okay for Nevada to have prostitution legalized. According to the article Buyers Without Remorse, Ending the Discriminatory Enforcement of Prostitution Laws, written in 2014 by Johnson, prostitution is criminalized in many states. It's a criminal offense and you can actually be arrested for it. And in 2012, there were over 62,000 cases where people were arrested for prostitution. Like I said, since prostitution is illegal in most states, it's seen as a crime and you can be arrested for it. The crime is usually just charged as a misdemeanor and the person is jailed or fined, but sometimes the consequences can be much worse. Now that you have the knowledge of the current status of prostitution, I'm going to tell you some of the benefits that come along with prostitution. There are a great amount of benefits that come along with prostitution, but the 2 biggest ones that I found are the amount of revenue that it can bring in to the United States, and also it allows police officers not to be tied down with the job of chasing these workers around and bringing them in. So like I said, prostitution is a great way to bring revenue into the United States. And right now, the money that's being earned by prostitutes is not being taxed because it's not a legal job, so they don't put it on their tax forms when they turn it in. But if it were to become a legal job, then they would be required to put it on their tax forms, and that money would be being taxed, which in turn would bring in more revenue. It can also bring in money if the job is legal, because then the workers can be offered health care and health insurance. According to the academic journal titled Revenues and Taxes from Sex Work, A Critical Perspective, written in 2017 by Mimosa David, if the workers choose to have health care, which it's been scientifically proven that most of them would, the workers would then have to pay for that health care, which in turn would bring in more revenue. As of right now, the U.S. prostitution trade is thought to bring in $14 billion every year, and it's not even a legal job. So just imagine if the job was legal and more people were doing this as a job, how much money the United States could be gaining from it. Another benefit of legal prostitution, like I mentioned earlier, is the fact that police officers would not have to be tied down with the job of putting these workers in jail. According to an academic journal titled Criminal Justice System Outcomes for Buyers, Sellers, and Facilitators of Commercial Sex, written by Alexander Upgrove in 2019, Just in one state, in one county of that state, in 1 year, over 1,000 people were brought in and jailed for the act of prostitution. So, if police weren't worried about taking these workers to jail, they would have more time and energy to focus on bigger issues. So, the current status and the benefits of prostitution influence my next topic, which is how we as a society view prostitution. So normally prostitution is either seen as a good thing or a bad thing. However, sometimes it's just completely overlooked and we don't think about it at all. According to an academic journal titled Ladies of Leisure, Parks, Policy, and the Problem of Prostitution, written by Caitlin McCauley, in 2008, people either look at prostitution as good or as bad. If people look at prostitution as good, it's usually because it gives jobs to certain people that wouldn't have jobs any other way. And if people look at prostitution as bad, it's usually because they find it immoral. However, the truth is we really shouldn't judge people on the types of jobs they have because not everyone can have the same exact job. Everyone's going to have a different job, everyone's going to make a different amount of money, and everyone's going to have a different lifestyle. We should just support one another in what they do because prostitution is just another job out in the market. Some people are more willing to do it than others. For example, some of you are going to be coal miners, some of you are going to be teachers. I'm not going to be either one of those. We're all different, but they're all just jobs that have to be done. Also, as long as there are rules for the job, just like any other job, things could be considered good and they can be considered safe. If there are employers that are higher up than the actual prostitutes themselves, then the immorality of being a prostitute is taken out because there's going to be structure and they're going to be forced to follow certain rules. For example, in Nevada, where they have prostitution as of now, the law requires that the employees go get tested for STDs every week, and you have to be 21 to even participate in the job. These are just some of the examples that show you that prostitution can be safe, and it also can change the way that we as a society view prostitution because it shows structure and safety in the job, not only for the prostitutes, but also the people around them. Like I mentioned earlier, some people turn a blind eye to the subject. This can be bad for the workers because they're not getting any jobs and they can struggle to make a living. In conclusion, it is clear that prostitution should be legalized. It is something that we overlook in America, but it's actually a huge part of America. The need for prostitution to be legalized is clear, and it can happen if we just continue the discussion on the status of prostitution, the benefits of prostitution, and how we view it. Even though prostitution can be a controversial topic, it doesn't mean that we should shy away from it. I hope that you all seriously consider the idea of prostitution being legalized. I would like to leave you with this quote from Jeanette Angel. She says, "The only way to stop this trafficking in and profiting of the use of women's bodies for prostitution to be legalized. Legalization will open it up to regulation, and regulation means safety."